Amy Costello. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that you could join us for the 6 pillars of healthy, sustainable flooring. I am Amy Costello. I am the sustainability manager for Armstrong Flooring. And I'm looking forward to sharing the CEU with everyone. The CEU is AIA approved for one health, safety, and welfare learning unit. It's also approved for the IDCEC and also for the GBCI for one continuous education unit credit if you're a LEED AP or a WELL AP or a Green Associate. So it qualifies for all 3. And Tom, I'm trying to share my screen, but it says it's been disabled by the host.
Give it a try now. That was my bad.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so as I said, one HSW credit, IDCEC credit, and if you have registered for the course and provided your number, we will record your attendance in the session in both of those systems after we finish the CEU. And we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the 6 pillars of healthy, sustainable flooring. And these 6 pillars really, even though the title of the CEU is flooring, are really applicable to most building products. And we're going to talk about them in the lens of WELL as well as LEED in those 2 building rating systems. And because this course does qualify for WELL, APs, well-accredited professionals, we'll notice that 3 of our objectives relate to specific features in the WELL building rating system. So we're going to be talking about those specific features as well as other features in the WELL rating system. And in WELL, a feature is very similar to a credit in the LEED rating system. And so we're going to talk about the pillars, and then we're going to talk about the pillars from the lens of both environmental sustainability as well as social sustainability. So we're going to talk about health and wellness and how they relate to the 6 pillars. But before we get started, we're going to try something. We're going to actually do a poll, and Tom's going to start a poll so we can all take a poll before we get started on the CEU. And so our poll, our question, we only have one question. Which below attribute do you most associate with sustainability? Air quality, acoustics, biophilic design and beauty, life cycle thinking, lighting efficiency, or safe, responsible products? What do you guys think? So the poll is coming in. I always think these are kind of exciting because you never know how you're going to end up with the results. All right, so it looks like almost everybody has responded. So I'll give you one more second, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And with that last minute person there who voted. Awesome.
Would you like me to close the poll?
Yeah, let's go ahead, Tom, and close it. Well, and so we have a winner. Can you? Can relaunch share results? Let's share the results so everybody can see them. Awesome. So this is how our results came out, and it actually came out sort of the way I thought they would, because one of the things I think is important with sustainability is sustainability means different things to different people. And I think as you talk with your customers, as you talk with people about sustainability, I think it's really important that you understand what they care about from a sustainability perspective. I'm happy to see the life cycle thinking, because I think probably of any of the results on there, that's probably one of the most important aspects of sustainability, is really looking at the product from that holistic perspective. But it's interesting how our results came out. And so we're going to continue with our CEU, and these are the topics that we are going to be talking about today. All right, Tom, can we go back to the CEU?
I removed the poll. Is that what you see?
There we go.
Oh, there we are.
And so when you talk about sustainability, you'll often hear the term the triple bottom line. And this was coined back in 1994. And it's the idea that to be sustainable, that you have to address or balance all three dimensions of sustainability. And I think when people first started talking about sustainability, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were really thinking about the planet side, the environmental side of sustainability. And you see that from like the LEED rating system, you see the energy efficiency, the water efficiency. And I think what you are seeing in the last few years is really a fundamental shift in how people think about sustainability. I think that environmental side is still very much important, but in the last 7 to 10 years, the people side, and when I say people, I think really health and wellness has really come to the forefront in terms of sustainability. And really that has been kind of the deciding factor. What is that people side, is the health and wellness of products. So those are the two things we're going to be talking about today, the people and the planet side of sustainability. Not going to talk so much about the profit side of sustainability. I think that is just, if you're following the people and the planet, that the profit will just make sense in terms of your business. And so we're not going to be just specifically discussing that today. So these are the 6 pillars of sustainability as we have defined them. And I had a really cool graphic that the marketing department or the creative team put together for me. But I put this little chart together, and I like this chart because I color coded it. Because what I think is interesting is there's some attributes are specifically related to people. So like biophilia and beauty or acoustics, there are specifically attributes associated with the social side of sustainability, with the people side of sustainability. But then you have some attributes like lighting or even air quality that can be affiliated with both the environmental side as well as that human health and wellness side of the house. So lighting, if you think about natural daylighting and how people need to have natural daylighting for health and for wellness, but you also have the electric lighting and reducing the electric lighting in your space to save energy and to have a lower footprint. So we're going to be exploring all 6 of these pillars this morning. I mentioned the WELL building rating system, and I like talking about the WELL building rating system just because it's the first building rating system that is entirely for people. It's completely focused on the health and well-being of building occupants. That is what the WELL building rating system has been designed to do. And it's broken into categories. It has these 7 categories that I'm showing on the right-hand side. And this is WELL version 1. Last week, they actually launched WELL version 2, which is very similar. It actually has 10 categories. They've broken out some of the categories in the second version. But we're going to be talking about version 1 today. And it's kind of similar to LEED, except as I said, it's all the credits, all the features, and instead of credits, they have features are related to health and wellness of the occupants. And in the rating system, they have what they call preconditions. These are mandatory requirements. And if you achieve all of the mandatory requirements, you can certify your building as a Silver WELL building. And if you achieve the preconditions and then what they call optimizations or optional features, then you can certify at higher levels like gold or platinum. And so when we look at a rating system dedicated entirely to the health and wellness of people, you think, well, why? Why do we need that? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think first of all, I think it's really important since we spend most of our time indoors that we have a healthy environment. And studies have shown, in fact, in 2015, Stanford University did a study, and they found that work-related stress accounts to, and this is in the US, work-related stress accounts to 190 billion, and that's with a B, in healthcare costs annually. So people stressed having to go to healthcare services because of stress, 190 billion annually. And this study correlated exposure to workplace stress with health-based outcomes and cost of care. So it's really expensive for people to be stressed. So if there are things you can do in your design of your space to reduce the stress, to make it a better environment where people feel better, have less stress, that's really positive. And it's positive for the people who are in that building, but it's also positive for the people that own the building, Because if it's your building and you want your employees not to be stressed, you want them to be productive, you want them not to be absent going to doctor's appointments trying to de-stress, you want them to really be productive. And what this chart on the right-hand side is showing you is that the salaries, the costs of the salaries and the benefits of the people in the buildings far exceeds the cost that you're paying annually for energy or even rent in the building. And so historically, our facility managers focused on, making our buildings really energy efficient. But in reality, the biggest expense we have in our buildings are the people, and the productivity. Increasing the productivity can really help an owner's bottom line. So I didn't do a polling question for this, so we probably should have. And I just want you in your mind to think about, where are you the most happy and relaxed and stress-free? It's probably not at work, but I always ask this question, and it may not be that scientific. When I do this CEU in person, I usually get the same response. I would say that probably 99% of the people, when I ask this question, tell me someplace outside. They tell me they're most relaxed at the beach or at the lake or in their backyard barbecuing or at the swimming pool, or they always tell me, hiking. They always pick some place that's outdoors. And there is a reason that we pick places outdoors. And it's a concept called biophilia. And biophilia is Greek for the love of life. And there is a design concept based on that idea of love of life or biophilia. It's called biophilic design. And biophilic design is an emerging field that recognizes our psychological need to be around life and lifelike processes. And I think we can all probably picture a location, an interior environment that was cold, sterile, devoid of life, and really think about how that space makes us feel, how it impacts our moods, and even how it reduces our creativity and our cognitive function. I think we can all think about a space like that. But instead of designing those cold, sterile spaces, if we design spaces that take into effect the concepts of biophilic design, bringing nature into the space, there have been oodles of studies that show it can improve your cognitive function, it can improve creativity, improve your well-being. There's been very, very specific evidence-based designs showing that patients in hospitals, they actually heal faster, require less medicine when they can look out the window and see the trees or see nature outside, as opposed to looking out and seeing the brick wall of the building next to them. So biophilic design really allows us to use nature to elicit a restorative response in human beings. And so when we think about biophilic design, there's really three patterns of biophilic design. There's the idea that you can bring nature into the space. And this is just what it sounds like. So you bring a plant. That's usually what people think about. Oh, I'm going to bring a plant into the space. But there's other ways to bring nature into the space. You can bring sunlight into the space. You can bring daylight into that space. You might want to bring a water feature into the space. And the idea of bringing nature into the space is really about stimulating your senses. And so if you bring light into the space, yes, you can see the light, you can see the patterns of light, you can maybe feel the heat on your skin while you're typing at your desk. If you bring water, you might be able to hear the water, you can see the water. You bring air movement, you can feel it on your skin. So it's the idea of stimulating all of your senses. And that's what happens when you go out into nature. And that's why you're stimulated, that's why you feel creative, because you're responding to all that stimuli that is out in nature, even though you might not be thinking about it. The other pattern is nature equivalence. And so maybe you can't bring air into the space or natural daylight into the space, but you can bring objects or materials or patterns into that space that really evoke nature. So you can bring things that look like nature into that space. And then the other thing that you can do is nature of the space. And this is the idea of differing spatial configurations in the built environment. And that's a lot of words. So this is really, there's several kind of sort of patterns that are associated with this. So you can basically bring perspective into the space. So maybe you have a catwalk in your design, or maybe it's a balcony or maybe you can look out and see sort of that perspective. Or maybe you can design spaces that make you feel safe, that make you feel comfortable. And the picture on the bottom right, you see this a lot, and this is kind of like a dining area, but you see that a lot in schools, especially elementary schools, little small study areas where the students can get a book, like book nooks, and they feel safe and can read their books. Or maybe it's the idea that you're creating a mystery, and you can, through your design, you can pull people into the space. You're sort of stimulating their mind, thinking, I want to go into that area because of the way the space has maybe been designed. Maybe it's a more curvature type space, and you want to follow that curve around to see what's around that next corner. Nature is messy. Nature is not laid out in perfect grids. Nature is it's almost more random in terms of it's very complex patterns and random patterns. And that's really what biophilic design means when you're bringing that into the space. And so with the WELL building feature, and I don't want to scare you if you're not familiar with WELL, at least version 1. And I was a little disappointed because version 2, I have not seen these little skeletons. And I biology major undergrad, so I always like the little skeletons. So biophilia really impacts your nervous system. So that's the idea behind the biophilia credit. And to get credit in WELL, you have to design a biophilic plan. And that plan has 3 parts. And it's 1, how did you incorporate nature into the space? How did you incorporate patterns of nature into the space? And then how did you design the space to really interact with nature? And it's kind of those 3 things that I just went over. And this is an optimization, which means it's optional. So you can do it, but it's not a mandatory feature in the WELL building rating system. LEED does not have a credit called biophilic design, but LEED has always had a credit. They've always had the daylight and quality views credit in their rating system. And if you read the intent of the daylight and quality views credit, the intent is to connect building occupants with the outdoors. And so it's kind of the first part of the intent, to reinforce circadian rhythms. And circadian rhythms, we're going to talk about that, but that's like our internal clock. And then the third sort of bullet that's part of the intent for the LEED credit is to reduce the use of electrical light by introducing daylight and views into the space. And so the way you get credit in LEED is by providing 50% of your regularly occupied, your irregular occupants with access to daylight. And then for the views credit, 50% have access to views. So views of flora and fauna and really movement from outside that space. And so with biophilia and with light, it can directly impact your mood or how you're feeling, your well-being. And it can do that in 2 ways. The first is kind of the direct path. You wake up and you see the sun peeking around the shades in the morning, and you know it's going to be a sunny day. And you're like, I got to get out there. I got to get up. And it just kind of makes you feel happy on a sunny day. Conversely, if you get up and it's raining and still dark out, you might not feel so happy or so inclined to get out of bed and start the day. So it could actually have a negative impact on your day. Light can also impact you indirectly. And that's sort of that whole internal clock, your circadian rhythms. That's where that comes in. You have in your eyes, you have what they call photosensitive ganglion cells, retinal ganglion cells. And these cells take in the light into your eyes, and that's how your internal clock gets set. So you might wake up every day at the same time, and that's part of because your internal clock is set that way. It helps control how well you sleep. And if your clock is set and you're doing well, you're usually in a pretty good mood. If you travel abroad, maybe change time zones, you're in a different time zone and you get up when you have to get up, you're probably not going to be in such a good mood because your clock is off its cycle and you're kind of at sorts, and you're probably going to be a little grouchy. So it's definitely going to impact your mood positively or negatively. Light can also impact your vision, your performance, as well as your sleep. There's been a lot of studies showing that children who are exposed to natural daylight actually have less likelihood of developing nearsightedness. So the more light a child is exposed to, it actually helps with the development of their eyes and helping to have their eyes be really strong so they don't need to have correction for nearsightedness. In addition, elderly people who have dementia, so Alzheimer's and different types of dementia, if you've ever been around somebody with dementia, one of the things that people with dementia do is they get up at odd times, they wander around. And one of the things that they are starting to research is maybe this is because, you know, they're in assisted living facilities, they don't have that exposure to natural daylight, their clocks, their internal clocks are not setting correctly. And there's lots of research looking at helping people with dementia improve their sleep quality and their behaviors by exposing them to natural daylight. So it's kind of exciting, all of the evidence-based design studies that are being done on light. So in addition to the well-being aspects, there's also the energy aspects. Lighting accounts for 20% of energy use in commercial buildings. Flooring has an attribute, it's called light reflectance values. Really all colors have a light reflectance value. If you go to Lowe's and get the paint chip, on the back of the paint chip, it usually will have an LRV value, and I'll tell you what that is. 0 means that all the light is absorbed. So black would be 0, all the light would be 0. Pure white would be 100%. All of the light is reflected off of that particular color. And the way you can use this in design is by selecting flooring that has a higher light reflectivity. You can work with your lighting designer to ensure that the watts, that you're using the fewest amount of watts possible in the lights. And you can also might not even need as many luminaries in the space to have the same amount of illumination in the space. And so when you look at floor light reflectivity, these are just some values. People are like, oh, we don't want white floors because it's hard to clean and hard to maintain. And so this is showing you 10% light reflectivity to 60%. And you can still get a fairly high light reflective flooring and not have it be pure white. The little blurb, if you read it on the left-hand side, is talking about a study that was done at Penn State with daylighting and using light reflectant flooring to push daylighting further into a space. And what Penn State found, depending on, you know, the siting of the building, you could actually put a 5-foot strip of high light reflective flooring around the outside where you have your windows of the building. And you could actually use it as almost like a floor level light shelf to push the light further into the space, which was kind of exciting that you only needed to have, you know, that small strip on the outside to be able to do that. So what's the difference between these two pictures? And this is kind of a trick question because there really isn't a difference between the two pictures except the light reflectance value of the flooring. So on the left-hand side, the light reflectance value is 60, and on the right-hand side, the light reflectance value is 20. And that's the only, this is done with like a computer rendering type software. And you can really see, at least I think you can see the difference, how much lighter the picture on the left-hand side looks compared to the picture on the right-hand side. It just makes it brighter because you have the direct light hitting that flooring, and then it bounces back up into the space. Whereas opposed to the darker color, it's absorbed in as heat into that flooring. And so this is just a graphic from a study that was done at Penn State University, and they looked at replacing a 10% light reflective flooring with 30%, 45%, and 60%, and they wanted to know what was the energy savings from electric lighting if you replace the flooring. And it was pretty spectacular. They looked at corridors, and so the corridors with replacing 10 with 30 reduced your energy by 3%, but if you replaced the 10% light reflective with 60, it reduced energy by 8%. And if in corridors you think about a corridor, there's no furniture. It's just there. The light, especially if you have direct light, shines directly down on the floor, gives you that opportunity to bring it back up, using the floor itself to bring it back up. The darker orange color bulbs is showing light, the energy savings from an empty classroom. And of course, most classrooms have furniture, so you might not get that high of a result, but at bigger spaces, you're able to save up to 16% energy in that space. So it is a significant savings, just thinking about and working with your lighting designer and the floor selection. The Illumination Engineering Society of North America recommends reflection values for different segments. So schools, they recommend 30 to 50% light reflectance, healthcare 20 to 30, and offices 20 to 40. And one of the new credits in LEED v4 is the environmental quality, the lighting quality credit. And the lighting quality credit offers rewards project teams for selecting flooring that has surface reflectance values greater than 25%. And most flooring manufacturers are going to be able to get that information from from your flooring manufacturer. So indoor environmental quality, we spend all of our time, and not all, but the EPA estimates, the United States EPA estimates 90% of our time indoors. And this is important because, you know, we build buildings really airtight nowadays to reduce energy, and what you bring into that space stays in that space because we don't have as many air exchanges that are occurring in the space. And so LEED has had for a long time their low emitting materials credit. LEED V4, they kind of changed. They added a bunch of additional products that would contribute to the low emitting material credit. Traditionally, they'd always had the paints and coatings, adhesives and sealants, flooring, and composite wood. But in 2013, when LEED V4 came out, they added ceilings, walls, insulation, furniture. They added a bunch of additional things. In 2018, they made changes to the low emitting material credit, and they broke down the credit, and they actually reduced the percentage of products that had to achieve this credit. They found that even they were a little optimistic when they first launched, and they realized that people were not doing the credit because they couldn't hit, you know, the 100%, or they couldn't hit the 90%. And so they backed it down a little bit because they felt like it was better for project teams to select as many low emitting products as they could. And so the way you get credit in LEED is by selecting, if you select 2 product categories, so 75% of your paints and coatings and 75% of your adhesives and sealants are low emitting, then you get a point within the LEED rating system. And WELL is very similar. If you are meeting the LEED requirement for low emitting materials, you would meet the LEED or the WELL requirement for feature 4 VOC reduction. And the VOC reduction is a precondition, so it is mandatory in the WELL rating system. And then here's our little skeletons that I like. Air quality affects all of your systems in the body. And I always get a kick out of this because I had never heard of the intergumentary system. So I always like to point that out because it does impact your intergumentary system. And that's your skin. Your skin is a system, and it's called your intergumentary system. So moving around our 6 pillars, I want to talk about acoustics and the 3 characteristics of sound. If I asked you what was the most annoying thing about sound in your office, these people are going to tell me about somebody that's very loud. That's usually something that annoys people when they're very loud people in their space. So loudness or amplitude of sound is an important characteristic, and it's measured in decibels or dB. And I'm showing you the pictures of the sound waves on the right-hand side. The louder you are, the higher the crest is on the sound wave, so the taller the sound wave is. When you're really quiet, your sound wave is very short. You don't have those really high peaks. The second characteristic of sound is pitch or frequency, and this is measured in hertz. And a lot of people, the human voice, we have a range. So different people have different pitches or frequencies to their voice. Some people have really low frequencies, so those really deep baritone voices. So that's around, I'm not sure if that was specifically 250 hertz, but they have those really deep voices. Whereas some people have really high, squeaky voices that are really, really squeaky. So human voice, 250 to 2000 hertz is kind of the range. And I put the sound wave pictures here because when you have a high voice, you have the distance between the crests of your sound wave. It's much closer together as opposed to those really deep sounds. And then the last quality is, or the last characteristic of sound is quality, or how well can you hear the sound? How clear can you hear somebody? Can you understand what they're saying? So those are the 3 characteristics of sound. And when you talk about flooring, sound can do 3 things when we talk about flooring. So you have a sound, the sound hits the floor, it's either going to be reflected off, and this is, I have a floor, but it could be a wall, it could be any object. It's going to do 3 things when it hits any object. It's going to bounce off, meaning it's reflected off, and that's measured in reverberation time. It's going to be absorbed by the surface, which means noise reduction coefficient is going to tell you how much sound is absorbed by that surface, or it's going to pass right through that material. And if it passes through, it's either going to be measured in sound transmission class or impact insulation class. So when people are talking about noise, it's important to understand what the issue is in the space where they are talking. And I found that different people need different things when they say, I have a noise problem. It's always good to clarify with your customer exactly what is the problem. Are they having problems with the noise in the room? Are they having noise between, floor to ceiling, between floors of the building? It's important to understand before you provide advice, understand what problem they are actually having with sound. So if it's sound in the space, one of the things is reverberation time. How long does it take? And what reverberation time measures is how long does it take for sound to deaden by 60 decibels in that space. And this is measured in time. And so sound will bounce around until it finds a surface where it's absorbed by. And so in the WELL Feature 78, they actually have a credit for reverberation time, and they provide recommendations. A conference room should have a reverberation time of 0.6 seconds, meaning that the sound has deadened by 60 decibels within 0.6 seconds. Sound absorption, measured by noise reduction coefficient, there are very specific materials designed to absorb sound. And I'm showing 3 materials on the slide. And they kind of all have the same sort of characteristics. The first one you'll probably see in restaurants, or definitely if you've ever been in a sound studio, they'll have this kind of material. This material, you'll notice, has little holes that allows the sound to go in. It increases the surface area where the sound can be absorbed. It's also not flat. It has those bumps to it, again, that increases the surface area and allows it to absorb more sound. Similarly to the picture on the right, I'm actually showing you a close-up of a ceiling tile, an acoustical ceiling panel. And what you'll notice with this acoustical ceiling panel is you'll see there's 2 different marks. So the kind of the big marks, they're really there for design. But behind that, they're the tiny little, very much in lines, they're little pinpricks behind on that tile. Those little holes have been put there very intentionally so that sound, when it hits the surface, will go into that hole. The surface area, when it goes in there, has absorptive material in there, and it's absorbing the sound. And the way noise reduction coefficient works, it's actually an average. They are averaging sound reduction at different frequencies of your human voice, because not all materials absorb the same frequency. So the noise reduction coefficient is just an average from 250 to 200, the range of the human voice. It's just an average of how much noise. And what you'll notice is that resilient flooring is not going to reduce sound by that much. So maybe 5% of sound will be reduced by resilient flooring. So probably not the best solution if you're trying to reduce sound in a space. Similarly, everybody wants to use carpet tile to reduce sound. Again, maybe 10% for carpet tile. Flooring is not designed to absorb sound. To absorb sound, you have to have that surface area. So you would have to have holes. It has to be porous. You have to, the characteristics associated with absorbing sound don't really go well with flooring. Ceilings, on the other side, if you look at your cheapest commodity ceiling tile, acoustic ceiling tile, it's going to absorb about 50% of the sound that hits that space. Just one more thing about carpet. Broadloom carpets, like really thick broadloom carpets, I mean, they're going to absorb maybe 20–25%, but you're not going to be able to get that sound absorption with the flooring that you're going to be able to get with other treatments like ceilings or acoustical wall boards. So the WELL Building Standard offers credit for sound reducing surfaces, and specifically ceilings and walls. Flooring is not part of this feature because you aren't going to be able to find products that are going to reduce sound that are flooring products. So for ceilings, the requirement is 90% noise reduction coefficient for open office ceilings, and for conference rooms, 8%. And then similarly for walls, they want at least 25% of office walls, as well as cubicles, to be at least 80% noise reduction. LEED has had a noise credit in the schools rating system since 2009, since the 2009 system. The prerequisite is you have to have background noise for your HVAC system. Has to be 45 decibels or less. And then again, very similar to what WELL did, it is saying that the total ceiling area, so the area equal to the ceiling, has to have noise reduction coefficient of 0.7. So it can either be the entire ceiling, having a ceiling tile of 0.7, or an equal space on the wall or the floor having noise reduction coefficient of 0.7. You're not going to have a flooring product that does that, so it's really, again, about the walls or the ceiling. And then for LEED V4, they reduced the background noise from 45 to 40, still have the exact same requirement for having the absorptive finishes, that 70% noise reduction finishes on the space equal to the ceiling. They also have a reverberation time, and they had that in 2009. It's kind of an option too, and that's really measuring reverberation time in the space. And it's done by an ANSI standard, saying what the time is required to reduce the sound by that 60 decibels within the space. And in that standard, there's a chart that says, in a classroom, you must be able to reduce the sound by 0.4 seconds. So it's provided by spaces. Where flooring really is a big player in terms of acoustics is in the transmission, okay? And this is from room to room. So multifamily, maybe schools where you have multiple levels. And there's two metrics. There's sound transmission class, and that's, can you hear my voice? It's airborne sound. Can you hear the TV in the apartment upstairs? Can you hear the people walking in the hotel room above you? That's sound transmission class. IIC is impact insulation class. That's, can you hear people walking? Can you hear the footsteps, the impact in the apartment upstairs? Can you hear suitcases being rolled across the floor in the motel room that you are staying in? And that's measured in IIC, or impact insulation class. The key to IIC and STC is that it's measured on the entire substructure. I always like to say it's measured on the whole sandwich. You've got to have all of those pieces in there. So if somebody says, my IIC of this flooring is 66, it is not going to be 66. The IIC of the structure that they tested it on may be 66, but not the individual flooring product. You always have to look at the whole thing. And I have in here the International Building Code requirements. So in the US, all the states follow the International Building Code, and the requirement for sound transmission class is greater than 50, and IIC is greater than 50 in the US. I'm not sure in British Columbia what the requirement, I'm sure there's a requirement, but I don't know the number to provide you today. But that is the requirement for residential. So any place where people sleep, so hotels, dormitories, they have to meet that requirement. What is comparable, the IIC is not comparable unless it's tested on the same structure. So in this table, all the products in this table were tested on the exact same structure. So you can compare those, no problem. The challenge is if you don't know what the structure was that the product was tested on. And this can be a lot of challenge sometimes to determine what structure it was tested on and then what structure do you have. There is a factor called impact Delta IIC, impact insulation class, Delta IIC, and that is just the contribution of the flooring product. And you can get the Delta IIC and you can compare one flooring product to the other flooring product using the Delta IIC number. So safety, in terms of our pillar, safety can mean a lot of different things as well. People, when you talk about floors, it can mean being slip and slip resistance. It can mean fire and life safety. It could also mean infection control. I think that's a really popular right now, as well as wayfinding. And I'm showing on the right-hand side, you can see the school, and they use wayfinding throughout the school building. It's color-coded by flooring to help people be able to move safely through the building. And the Well Building Standard actually has a feature 72, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, so ADA accessibility. And this is a US act, but the Well Building Standard is an international standard. And so not all countries have an accessibility standard or regulation or requirement. And so it's a precondition or mandatory requirement that buildings comply with the requirements of the ADA. And for flooring, section 302 of the ADA standard says that floors and ground surfaces shall be stable, firm, and slip resistance. From an infection control perspective, we've been hearing a lot about antimicrobials and surfaces. There are two different types of surfaces, and they're based on how you touch the surface. Is it a high touch surface? Do you frequently touch it, or is it a low touch surface? So things like doorknobs, light switches, elevator buttons, handrails, those are high touch surfaces. And in the Well Building Standard, feature 28 is antimicrobial surfaces. It's an optimization, so it's an optional credit, but they really encourage the addition of antimicrobials only to non-porous, high-touch surfaces. So, handrails or doorknobs. They do not include flooring. Flooring is not a high-touch surface, and it's not a good idea to add antimicrobials to low-touch surfaces, because this can result in sort of super germs. You can result in kind of the opposite effect that you want to have. You don't want to create situations where our antimicrobials do not work and do not do their purpose on, you don't want to have antimicrobial resistant microorganisms. And adding antimicrobials where you don't need them is something that can contribute to antimicrobial resistant organisms. So life cycle thinking, what most people on this call today thought was the most important attribute. And I have to probably agree with you, because there's so many things with life cycle thinking, this holistic idea of looking at the product from the very beginning, from the raw materials all the way through to the manufacturing use, and then what happens to that product at the end of life. And I always like to tell people that truly sustainable flooring systems consider the life cycle, and they provide space-appropriate performance and durability. And nothing is more non-sustainable than installing a product that you have to take out or take back out or pull up, 6 months later because it could not hold up to the foot traffic that particular space had. So you always want to think about the performance of the product before you install it. The WELL rating system has a feature, it's feature 11, fundamental material safety, and it does have restrictions that could be applicable to flooring. They do not want asbestos in flooring, or in any product according to the standard, and they also want you to restrict lead to 100 parts per million. The other parts of this feature are more about abating buildings as opposed to specifically related to flooring products. Also, feature 97 is it's very similar to LEED. They want you to select materials, at least 50% of the interior finishes that meet these requirements, that meet these transparency requirements. Either they have a declare label, they have a health product declaration, or any method that's acceptable to LEED V4 material and resources credits for building product optimization and disclosure material ingredients. So manufacturers, I put a note, manufacturers should know what are in their flooring products. There are a lot of flooring products that are made out of polyvinyl chloride. PVC is probably the most common resin that is out in the market today. It also has the lowest carbon footprint of any of the resins that are out in the market today. But it does require something called plasticizers to make it flexible, to make it bend and to move. And there's different kinds of plasticizers. Some plasticizers, known as orthophthalates, are considered to be kind of bad actors, and there's been a big effort to change over, to move away from orthophthalates in favor of orthophthalate-free type products. And I put a little star and I put safe additives, and that was per Dr. Michael Brumgard. Dr. Michael Brumgard was the author and the co-founder of the Cradle to Cradle Institute. And so, there are phthalates, such as terephthalate, that appear to be better, safer choices than other plasticizers that are on the market. And I tell you that because I wanted to mention the WELL feature 25, toxic material reduction, which is about phthalates or plasticizers. And with this credit, it's very specific. There are 6 very specific orthophthalates that the credit suggests that you limit to 100 parts per million. And they specifically call out flooring with this particular material reduction. And it's very important to note too that the Living Building Challenge Red List, as well as the WELL Building Standard, only limit or disallow certain orthophthalates. So just that when people use the word phthalate as a generic term, it's important that you realize that orthophthalates are kind of the bad actors. Similarly, the WELL Building Standard has a requirement for halogenated flame retardants and restriction of specific halogenated flame retardants. You're not going to find halogenated flame retardants in vinyl flooring. This is more of something you would find in carpet and fibers that are going to burn. PVC is naturally resistant to flames. And in flooring, you want it to be durable. You want it to be easy to maintain and easy to clean. You can't disinfect something if you cannot clean it, so that's important. And also abrasion resistance. You want it to be able to resist scratches. And I think the statement at the bottom, durability is a combination of attributes impacted by maintenance. So, think about the winter when you put salt down or sand down to help with slipperiness from ice outside. People track that inside. It's important that you clean that up. If you leave it there, that's going to, continue abrade and scratch the flooring. So durability is directly related to how well you maintain your product. And then manufacturing, you want manufacturing to be responsible and transparent. Think about the manufacturers that you're using. What policies do they have in place? Do they do sustainability reporting? Do they have environmental management systems? Do they have product take-back programs. And I think that's really important. There is so much waste, construction debris waste that's generated. The EPA estimates that 95% of building construction waste can be recycled, yet most of it ends up in landfills. And the recyclability of your product really depends on what the material is made out of, how it's designed, and the manufacturing process. So I always recommend you ask your manufacturer questions about how do you recycle this product at the end of life, because they should be thinking about that question. Oops, I had a summary slide that didn't show up. So hopefully at the end you will be able to describe and talk about the six pillars that we have gone over today. And I'm happy to conclude our CEU and answer any questions that you might have. I also put my email address, and I also put my colleague Shannon Krumsky's email address, because if you have specific flooring questions, she is your regional manager for flooring in British Columbia, and she'd be happy to help with any questions you guys might have as well. So Tom, do we have any questions in the chat box?
Hello, Amy. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I'm looking here. No, I don't see any. Let's see if anyone wants to either paste it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and then you can present it yourself. Now is a good time.
Tom, your voice is coming across very softly.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah. Had my boom mic down. Feel free to unmute yourself and present a question. Oh, there's Shannon. Hello,
Hi.
Shannon.
It's my partner in crime. No questions?
No questions. Lucky. Well, I do see a bunch of people here, Amy, that I know that I invited from the architectural design world. I'll make sure I follow up with all of them individually too. But one thing I would say is that Armstrong Flooring does a really good job at keeping all of their information available on our website for lead documents and environmental product declarations and health product declarations, and all of those things around the sustainability pillars that you talked about today is readily available on our website. And if you ever need any of that, by all means, let me know.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time, Amy. I know you are on Eastern Pacific Standard Time, or Eastern Time for sure, 3 hours ahead. So thank you for accommodating us and taking the time for our province in general.
Sure, anytime.
I guess we can end the meeting. Any final words, Amy and Shannon?
I'm good. Good luck on all the other presentations. Thanks to the BC Floor Coverings Association and Building Supplies Industry Association for putting this education stuff on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy and Shannon. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Take care.